So I have a niece whose family, is this right? I have a niece whose family attend a Presbyterian church up in Northern California. And one of the activities at this church that has engaged my niece's husband is a men's group led by the minister. Apparently, in one of their meetings, they were discussing different religious traditions with the minister, and Jeff said to him, "So my wife's aunt is a Unitarian minister. What do they believe?" And the minister thought for a moment and then very diplomatically answered, "Well, they're good folks. They share a lot of our beliefs and values. They're a little loosey-goosey, but other than that." Now, I'm not sure just what he meant by that. It could be that he was referring to some of our organizational structure, which in the eyes of ministers of more hierarchical religious traditions might seem a little bit loosey-goosey. Apparently, some man was once asked if he belonged to any organized religion, and he said, "Oh no, I'm a Unitarian Universalist." I am pleased to note that the leadership of this congregation has done a lot over the last few years to make that joke irrelevant. Some of this perceived loosey-goosiness may be manifested through our anti-authoritarianism, which UUs have tended to raise to a high art form, especially here on the West Coast. A few weeks ago, I shared with you that the first congregation I ever served used to love recalling how when I came there as their first minister ever in 25 years, they'd only allow me to preach once a month. So afraid were they that this new preacher would come in and take over everything. The decision to move me to twice a month came only after a survey was taken to see whether people wanted that or not. They did. By the time I left there 15 years later, I had been increased to the standard 3 out of 4 Sundays a month, but it was a very slow process. And while they and I would tell this story with affectionate chuckles, it does point to both a fear of unbridled ministerial authority and a celebration of what Unitarian and Universalist theologians have long called the priesthood of all believers, the idea, going back to Martin Luther, that wisdom is spread among us all and does not rest just with the ordained clergy. It also points to our commitment to the democratic process, our 5th UU principle. The most important decisions, including whether to call a minister or not, are usually made by the members of a congregation, hopefully after ample opportunities for you to educate yourselves on the issues and to voice your opinions. It's why it's so important that you show up for workshops like the one being given on Saturday to learn about the financial issues of this congregation and what the next budget is proposing, and to give your input on it, because you'll be voting on it in June. We have no bishops who choose our leaders or decide what stands to take on important social issues. It is all up to you, the laity. But I suspect that the real reason my niece's minister called us loosey-goosey had to do with our theology, with our beliefs or lack thereof. For that is where most non-UUs seem to have the most difficulty with us. They just can't figure out what the heck it is we believe. Several years ago, after officiating at a wedding, one of the guests approached me and asked me what religious tradition I was representing. And when I said Unitarian Universalist, he said, "You know what?" with a perplexed look on his face. I sighed. "Unitarian Universalism," I said, bracing myself for the next question. "What's that?" So I began my standard explanation back then. I said, we're a religion which evolved out of the Christian tradition, which believes that there are many paths to religious understanding, blah-de-blah-de-blah. Finally, with some exasperation, the man said, "Oh, well, at least we're all Christian." To which I replied, "Well, not necessarily." I explained that Unitarian Universalists see Jesus as a great teacher and prophet, but not as God or the Messiah. I said that we turn not only to the life and teachings of Jesus for inspiration, but to those of the Buddha, Muhammad, and many others. Now, thoroughly confused, the man said, "Oh, well, we all believe in the same God." I said, "Well, not necessarily," and changed the subject. It is hard to pin us down theologically. We don't have a creed like most other traditions. Instead, we have 7 principles, which you can find at the front of your hymn book, which evolved from a long process carried out in our individual congregations across the continent and then culminating in a vote by the delegates at a General Assembly. And those principles don't tell us what to believe, but rather what it is we value, what we covenant to affirm and promote. They serve as a guide for how we are to treat one another, how we treat the earth, and how we envision the world. But they do not tell us anything about the existence or nature of a God, about what constitutes sin, or whether there is life after death. Those hard questions are left for us to struggle with individually and as a religious community. Someone once said that Unitarian Universalism is a questing religion, that we are not a chosen people, but a choosing people. Hence the term heretics for us, people who choose what we believe. Ours is a fluid religion which honors ambiguity and movement and affirms both science and mystery. And while this may make some people uncomfortable, I find it the most endearing and profound aspect of our faith. I once heard of a woman who was about to go through some classes to join one of the Protestant churches, but finally decided against it because she didn't agree with the words of their creeds. When she informed the minister of her decision, he said, "Oh, my dear lady, we don't ask that you believe them, only that you memorize them." But as with most of us, this woman couldn't recite something that she didn't believe, as if she did. She needed to be authentic in her religious practice. She understood what Thomas Paine asserted when he said, "Infidelity doesn't consist in believing or disbelieving. It consists in professing to believe what one does not believe." As Unitarian Universalists, we are called to reject such infidelity in every corner of our life, but most particularly in the religious corner. That is why there are jokes about UUs praying to whom it may concern, or that we are poor hymn singers because we're always reading ahead to make sure we agree with the words. These are important distinctions. Rather than signifying a lack of conviction, they point to the fact that we cherish our ability to think and experience and sort out and interpret for ourselves. As both Jesus and the Buddha encouraged their followers, we are lamps unto ourselves, and we let those lamps illuminate the world around us so that we can see more clearly and help others to see themselves and their path more clearly. In his book, Challenge of a Liberal Faith, George Marshall affirmed that by joining a Unitarian Universalist church, we recognize that there are no holy books, but that all ideas that are creative and inspiring and lead to a better life are religious. We recognize that all days are holy, all people sacred, and all life a unity. But that does leave things pretty wide open, even loosey-goosey perhaps. And one of the concerns about us has been whether we hold anything to be absolute. Is there any absolute truth for a UU? Other religions do claim absolutes, the existence of a god or gods, the nature of evil, what constitutes sin, etc. And in the early Unitarian Universalist church, there were some absolutes. The Unitarians believed in one God versus the Trinity. The Universalists believed in salvation for all, even the most sinful. And both traditions stood firmly by their belief in the absolute right of every person to read the Bible and interpret it for him or herself, which of course opened up the possibility of challenges to those other two absolutes. Every belief opened up new questions and doubts. It is no different, really, for our faith today, as the sign in front of Troop Unitarian Universalist Church many years ago said, "Have all your answers questioned here." The Reverend David Park has said that the freedom to define one's faith is sacred and, within the limit of humans, absolute. Is such freedom loosey-goosey? I don't think so. Indeed, is it really so different from the Jewish tradition of arguing one theological point and then saying, on the other hand, we, like they, love the argument. We cherish the dialogue. There is a story of a conversation overheard one day between two women where one asked the other what Unitarian Universalists believe, and without a moment's hesitation, the other woman replied, "Recycling." Well, that's pretty true. Indeed, it could have been a conversation here at CVUUF, given the work you're doing on climate change. This belief in recycling and other earth-sustaining practices is grounded in our seventh principle, respect for the interdependent web of all existence, of which we are a part. But if those two women were to read the mission statement of this congregation over there on your wall, they would learn more about UU beliefs. They would learn that you strive to be spiritually courageous so that you can transform the world through justice and compassion, something desperately needed in these times. If they were to read your website and newsletters, they would learn that you are deeply involved in the needs of the wider community through your monthly community forum that offers education and inspiration about important issues, through your collection of food every Sunday for the Manna Food Bank, and your providing and serving of food at Calvary Community Church to people in need, through letter writing to prison inmates in solitary confinement, and through your work for marriage equality, immigrant rights, income inequality, and other issues of justice. And if those two women, wondering what UUs believe, were to spend time here with you, they would witness a people who take the spiritual journey seriously, who care deeply about one another's personal joys and sorrows, who are committed to children, your own and those in the wider community, and who know that our Unitarian Universalist values cannot remain within these walls, but must be incarnated as we work for justice and healing in the world. Underlying all of this runs an unbroken thread, common among Unitarian Universalists, our absolute commitment to religious pluralism, not just the presence of it, but the nurturance and celebration of it. What we UUs have found in our religious journey is what Georgia O'Keeffe discovered in her art. "I thought someone could tell me how to paint a landscape," she said, "but they could only tell me how they painted theirs. Only I could paint mine." We passionately support each individual's right to paint their own religious landscape. It is the basis of our fourth principle, to affirm and promote a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Do we believe in God? Some do, some don't, and some will say it depends on your definition. Do we believe in an afterlife? Some do, some don't, And some will say, depends on your definition. Are we Christian, humanist, Jewish, atheist, Muslim, Buddhist, pagan? Yes, we are made up of all of these and more. That's the beauty of us. That's the power of our movement, the power to choose, to believe what our own reason and our own heart tell us, and even the power to say, I don't know. Is that loosey-goosey? Perhaps. But if it is, then I will wear the label proudly and with good humor, because I love this faith of ours. I love it because it encourages me to believe in an unlimited picture of the eternal, indefinable, but wondrous and powerful and experienced in relationship. I love this faith because it looks for truth not only in the Bible, but also in the Bhagavad Gita, the Quran, the Hasidic mystics, the poets, in the beauty of the earth, and in relationships. I love this faith because it has taught me the redemptive possibilities for all people here on earth and calls me to forgiveness and reconciliation. I love this faith because it presents me with a divinity of every human being, not just one, and encourages me to celebrate each person's age, creed, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, and struggles toward authentic living. I love this faith because its essence does not lie in any dogma, but rather in how we live our faith and our values, how we treat each other and the earth. And finally, I love this faith because it has the audacity to give each of us the freedom to say, I don't know. I thought I knew yesterday, and I may know again tomorrow. But for today, I just don't know. What's not to love? Our world needs a faith such as ours, which insists that love will conquer fear and that our work for justice will free us all. Unitarian Universalism can serve as a bridge between the people of the world because of our openness to diversity. Ironically, the quality that leads some to call us loosey-goosey is the very quality that could heal our broken world. There will always be jokes about Unitarian Universalists, some of which may make us wince. But most of these jokes spring from some very basic and wonderful truth about us. So enjoy the jokes. Have a good laugh. Be proud of the truths to which they point. For it is what brought each of us into this faith. It is what engages and sustains us. May it always bring us home to ourselves. Amen. And I invite you now, as I extinguish the flame of our chalice, to read with me the words that are printed in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
We are the Caneo Valley Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. Our mission is to nurture spiritually courageous people who transform the world through justice and compassion. Like us on Facebook, check out our website at cvuuf.org, or come visit us. See you soon!